Welcome again to Christ Alone Ministries. This is What is Wrong with the Youth Part 2. And last time we belabored on quite a number of points. And so we need to continue from where we left last time. And today I think I'm going to talk generally about four things. Beginning with the point regarding the feminism crusades that have been done by and large by the women. Now, in some other casts earlier on, I talked about Gershom, who decided to abolish polygamy single-handedly with the aid of the wife, who not only initiated it but supported it. 996 AD, we now have witnessed a lot of growth in the momentum of feminism crusades, where women are really empowered for their rights, when to say no, when to say yes. And so this has really impacted on the way women are bearing children and what they tell the children. And not only that, even on breastfeeding, because women think they don't need to breastfeed for a long time because, children will make the breasts to sag. But that is beside the point. When feminism gained momentum up the postmodern era, it has really affected the way mothers are disciplining or instilling virtues into their children. Because one of the things is that women are really hinged on the search or the quest for freedom, that they now neglect the children at home. What is now the preoccupation of women is the quest for freedom and women's rights. So most of the time is spent on these crusades. For example, in Kenya, the two-thirds gender rule, political power, and political seats, which is okay anyway, but then it has some impact on the way children are raised, because if you lose a child during the developmental phase, that is 49 years, then you lose them for good. So as women search for rights and empowerment, as they do additional crusades in the postmodern era, they are leaving children in the hands of nannies, in the hands of house helps or house managers. What remains is a big gap where there's no one to instill the proper values in children. I talked about the aspect of God. Children need to know who is God. And so when there's a lot of time wasted on other things, then virtues on God, virtues on forgiveness, on money, on power, on education, on other things like forgiveness, helping one another. We need to know that when a child is able to have the required values during the developmental phase, then they will not leave these values even as they grow up. And that one is supported by the Bible. And I'm going to read a verse, Proverbs 22, verse 6. It says, "Teach your children to choose the right path, and when they are older, they will remain upon it." Okay? When you teach the children the proper values, anything about life, the relevant disciplines about life, that even when they grow, they do not depart from this path. So it is upon the mothers, upon the parents, whether it is single father or a single mother, to stick to the lane of instilling values during the developmental phase of the child and beyond. These are my thoughts. If you did your research, you realize that young people do not want to go to church. And something else that is also shocking is that young people of today, because they've not been taught about what matters in life, you realize that they only want to hear about God for 5 minutes. But they do not mind listening, hearing, watching other things outside of God for 30 hours. For example, a young man would choose to watch a 30-hour series of a movie, but only listen to 5 minutes of God, because the attention span has been greatly diminished. And so the parents have failed to help the young people to refocus on things that matter and where to channel the energy on things that matter and make life. And then the youth will find themselves dwelling on values that are fleeting. For example, fashion is fleeting. It changes every day. One of the things the producers of fashion and design will do is to ensure that the client or the customers will never have enough. Be it a mobile phone, be it a car, be it television set, be it computers. Designers of these things, their purpose is to ensure that young people will never have enough. If we don't tell them the truth about these things, then they are relying or putting a lot of energy on the things that are fleeting. Okay? For example, if a young man or a young lady, a young woman for that matter, buys an iPhone in one street or in one corner of a street, immediately she walks down and takes a bend in another street, she will find another iPhone or another mobile device that is actually latest than what they have just bought 5 or 6 minutes ago. Now, it behooves on the mentors to make sure that young people channel their focus on things that are more sustainable. Another thing that is not sustainable and it is moving and influencing the youth is the issue of things like beauty and modeling. If a young man or a young woman is modeling, which is okay, by the time they hit 24 years, 25 years, nobody would want to look at them because they are already retired. So the only thing that is sustainable, doable, reliable, dependable is education and certificates. If we emphasize on the need of good education on young people, as they age, they realize that they can actually take advantage and benefit from education until they are 95 years, until death. The other point. What about churches that do not talk about values? What about churches that only reinforce pop culture? What about churches that only reinforce money and wealth and health? Do they really have a negative impact? Yes, of course they do. Because after parenting, the other institution that molds a child or a young person is a church. So if the church also focuses on things that are fleeting, then it negatively affects the young person. It is upon ministers of the word also to seize the opportunity and have support groups for the adult becoming, where they are taught about money, where they are taught on mobile banking, table banking, loans, what to borrow, the concepts about finance. Because lately you realize that young people really have a lot of ignorance when it comes to finances. You've heard about the 50-30 rule of financial management, yes? Okay, so if the church takes the opportunity to teach about the 50-30 rule of finances, that any amount of money you make, 50% goes to basic needs, 30% would go to entertainment, and 20% would go to savings. However, my opinion is that even as we teach young people about money, what if we do the other way around, that 50% of the income for basic needs, the necessities, 20% goes for entertainment, and then 30% goes for savings? That is my own view. The church needs to concentrate on not only spiritual matters, but other matters that are relevant, that are impactful, that are sustainable to these young people. If the church neglects its duty on these matters, then children, young people, adult becoming will take on life with a lot of ignorance. Okay? Because you cannot only talk about spiritual matters and fail to have support groups, fail to have classes on finance, classes on marriage, classes on social life, classes on fraud, classes on social media bullying. All these things times need to be dedicated on sporting. Young people need sporting, reinforced by the church, reinforced by the parents. By the way, during the 844 system, parents, mentors, guardians, made young people believe that life is made up of books alone. And so everything was about Minsko and Minsko. One thing that happened negatively, or the outcome, the consequence was this. They made young people believe that if they fail in books, if they fail in classwork, then they fail in who they are, which is a lie. If one fails in what they do not fail in who they are as people. The church needs to talk about these things, okay? It needs to put emphasis on this, besides only preaching and normal classical ways and routines of the church and the cathedrals, okay? The church should not only be the place for the altar pronouncements and the exorcism of demons, but other things that I've mentioned need also to be emphasized, and to be taught in the churches. Okay? Something else that is wrong with young people is because as parents, because of affluency, we are beginning to take our children to neutral value schools. I don't want to mention the names, but neutral values are no values. Philosophically, this is what I can say. Neutral values stand for nothing. So if young people are admitted or taken to schools that are of neutral values, then they begin to stand for nothing. When they stand for nothing, then anything goes. As I said earlier on, if you don't have a value, then any value works. You stand for nothing. Neutral values are nothing. We need to help young people stand up for something no matter what. So my idea is, even if we take young people to better schools, we need to ensure that they are schools that stand for something. Relativism has become a curse of today. We need absolutes in schools. We need absolutes at home. We need absolutes in church. Good people. God is a God of absolutes. So if you bring neutral values in the name of democracy and relativism, then become enemies not only to the young people for their future, but enemies of God. It behoves upon us now to go to absolutes, go to values, stand for something, and so that we help young people stand for something in their lives. Lest it gets murky, it gets weird, it gets worse for these young people that we have been privileged to raise and mentor. Okay? If schools focus more on books and mean scores alone, people, then they will only convert the young people to academic robots. Okay? With the neutral values. Academic robots who stand for nothing, they end up becoming clueless dummies. Is that what we want for our kids? We want them to think outside books. We want them to excel in sports, excel in social life, excel in social media, excel beyond books and school, excel to their old age. That is what we want. Okay. So what is the outcome of this neglect? One is that now we have a generation that stands for nothing. A generation that does not love God. A generation without God. An unchurched generation. A generation where God has literally been thrown through the window. Without God, we are nothing people. In Him do we move, have our being, and exist. But again, the quest for democracy, to make them feel good about themselves, to make them have their way, has become enmity with God. Is that what we want? This is exactly what is wrong with young people. Look at the digital age. The consequences of neglect when it comes to mentoring young people is that because of the neutral values, they are passing it on to other young people. They bully others. They ban schools. Okay? If they don't do well in Minsk, then they ban schools because, as I said, they've been taught if you don't get A's, if you don't excel in classwork, you are a nobody. They are committing murders, manslaughter, getting into crime. They are committing suicide. They are committing homicide. Because parents, the family setup has neglected its role on the fundamentals, on the prerequisites, on things that matter, and focus the energy on fleeting things. Life is not made up of money alone. Life is not made up of sex alone. Life is not made up of beauty alone. Life has more. There's more to life than what meets the eye. Friends, we need to talk to young people about digital age. What about the information? How do we filter what we absorb in our minds? How much time should we spend on computers? How much time should we spend on TV? How much time should we spend on the internet? How much time should we spend playing? Okay? How much time should we spend reading God's word? Because in God, we have our being. He is the initiator and supporter of life. He is the creator of life. We cannot, this is what is wrong. The same young people are now becoming leaders of today. They are getting positions in government with neutral values, with bullying mentality, okay? With focus on fleeting things. Then what happens? Then a country is thrown to the dogs. Issues that kill a generation. Who will take care of the mentors and the guardians and the parents when they are older? Is it not the same generation that has neutral values? Is it not these people? So what do we want for our countries? What do we want for the world? What do we want for our faithfuls, people of God? Okay? So a generation of neutral values, a generation without discipline, a society without God. Therefore, no morals, no love, no forgiveness, no discipline on money, bad boring culture. Okay? A generation that has disrespect for parents, a generation that does not even value life, a generation that killing is a norm, abortions is murder, a generation that has been impacted with negative values, okay, will not value life, will not value the country, will not value money, will not value hard work. That is the outcome. So which is the way forward, good people? Genesis chapter 1 verse 28 says, God blessed them and told them, multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. Be masters over the fish and birds and all the other animals. Yes, we can only subdue the earth. We can only multiply, as in having dominion, having creativity and innovation amongst young people and for the young people. We can only do that if we are mentored properly. If we are told and taught the things that I have highlighted. That's the only way to subdue. The world becomes a better place, literally. The Bible vests both the power and responsibility, okay, to raise young children who are morally correct and right, okay, with psychological balancing, emotional balancing, okay, on the parents. People, teach your children to choose the right path, and when they get older, they remain upon it. Ephesians 6:4. And now a word to you fathers. Don't make your children angry by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction approved by the Lord. Making your children angry does not necessarily mean emotion. It means make them stable mentally, make them good people, responsible adults, responsible teenagers. Okay? Make them that. The Bible behooves upon us as mentors and parents. Is there hope? Yes. Let us begin to do things right now. Let us begin to make things right. It is not too late. Thank you. and shalom. See you again in the next cast.